Welcome back, one and all, and welcome to yet another episode where we look at Kamen Rider Revice, the 38th episode of Revice. And I have a lot to say about this episode, so I'm just going to end this preamble and let's dig into the episode itself, shall we? Alright, so episode 38, Father and Child Wavering Together, the Ultimate Revice. I kind of really love this title. Anyway, the episode follows up with the ending from last week, with Hiromi returning, and Taiji is basically regressed in his character arc, which, understandable, he has evil literally digging in his ear all the time, as well as literally what just happened to Akemi, so he's obviously not wanting to deal with his brother, and Hiromu's return only barely registers to him, as he's just tired. He's just tired and he goes back to Phoenix. Meanwhile, everyone celebrates Hiromi's return a bit, and we get to see Loveku celebrating Hiromi's return, and it's kind of cute, although it's funny that they let Vice out to celebrate Hiromi being back, but they don't let Loveku out, which is kind of fucked up if you ask me. But anyway, everyone's kind of happy, and Hiromi is kind of sad that he wasn't there to help stop Daiji. He reveals that he was faking his amnesia. Again, I haven't seen the Hiromi miniseries. I might watch it. Still debating about that because I hear it's more of a drama piece. But yeah, so he is a bit sad about what happened with Daiji and Akemi, and the group are trying to find a way to still get I'm forgetting names again. The gift cells. Why did I forget gift cells? How did I forget Giff? He's the main villain. Oh, there's a reason I forgot Giff. They're still trying to find a way to get the gift cells so that they can complete the final Vice stamp. But they have an issue because, well, again, they don't have Akemi around. But in comes Genta. Genta decides to use the gift cells that are literally making up his heart right now in order to, well, power it up. Everyone's kind of iffy about this because they don't know the chances of success on it, but they decide to go with it anyway. There's a moment, as this episode has a lot to do with George and his father in a pretty cute way. George is kind of against using Genta as a source for the gift cells because he doesn't want his dad to. He believes that his father is going down the wrong path in terms of being a scientist in a way, and he has his own issues because, when your dad fakes his death for, I'm going to assume little George is like 10, and current George is like, 20-something, for at least 10 years, you end up with some mixed emotions when you find out the dude's alive. And as we found out from last week's episode, George's dad faked his death primarily because he'd want to keep George out of his mess. Probably should have stepped in when your son decided to work for Phoenix, but you do you, old man. Anyway, Daiji is still being pissed off, and even a talk from Hiromi won't help him. And meanwhile, the Gift Juniors are all out on parade. And we get a pretty cool 4-way rider transformation. Everyone transforms except for Daiji because he's still being pissed off and in the corner right now, as he's kind of regressed back to early season Daiji, but even angrier. Anyway, they have a cool fight, and then I was thinking, hey, I wonder where Vale is. It seems like a moment where he would show up. Vale shows up. Like, I'm literally watching the episode thinking, I wonder where Vale is. This is something that he would normally show up to, and then bam, there's Vale. The timing behind that is kind of hilarious to me. Yeah, but he shows up, jumps Icky, as you would expect, because he's always going to jump Icky, or maybe Sakura. He's going after these Igarashi kids. So he fights Icky, but then he suddenly stops because he's like, wait a second, you're going after the heart. Because, again, Vale is like Vice. If Icky dies, Vice dies. But a similar case, if Genta dies, Vale will die. So Vice books it to where we don't know. Like, you think he would go back to Genta, but obviously he doesn't know where Genta is, so I don't know where he goes off to after Icky gives him the finisher attack. But Icky runs in the middle of the surgery that's ongoing. In the middle of the surgery, George and his father somewhat reconciled and are working together to finish the Vice Stamp. But Icky comes in the middle of it, and the Vice Stamp is like 95% complete. But he stops it mid-completion because it's hurting his father, and his dad might die. And because he doesn't want his dad to die, he says, "Fuck this, I'm taking the Vice Stamp anyway." And so he stops them from finishing it, but he also he stops them from finishing it, but it's also finished anyway. And it's kind of funny because almost immediately the Vice Stamp books it, and they're like, "Where's it going?" And it's going to its source in GIF, I guess, to finish its completion in order to get the rest of the GIF cells. So it's going to fly into the GIF hole, and Nikki and Vice have to book after it in order to catch the damn thing. Which is kind of hilarious watching this thing fly through the fucking air and take out... It takes out like 2 GIF Juniors when it flies. And so, no, we get to see Icky use the hovercopter again, which obviously they wouldn't... Obviously, I'm like, they didn't use that a lot this season. I'm like, obviously they wouldn't. It cost, I don't know how much to get the actual prop up. But anyway, they catch it. Well, Icky catches it and lands on the ground. Now, interesting note, George gave Icky a copy second Revice driver because the Gifford Rex Vice Stamp, that's the Vice Stamp in question, isn't one Vice Stamp. It's 2 Vice Stamps that are combined into one. So Icky and Vice break it apart into 2 forms. Icky getting the upper jaw and Vice getting the lower jaw. And then they use it in tandem, and we can see them transform together, which is really cool because, again, we haven't seen this the entire series because, obviously Icky's the one that has the driver, so Vice is typically in, his, phasey demon form holding up the Vice Stamp goo. But in this case, no, they transform together, and for a split second they combine into one, for a split second, and then they combine outwards into 2 again, and I'm going to talk about the suit later, but now they have Gifford Rex, and it is such a cool Final Form debut. This does the Final Form debut thing where it shows off powers that it's probably never going to use again. Like, in the middle of the fight, it shows off a cloning power that's just like, Kato Kiraba wants his gimmick back. It's like, if we could just use this in every fight, this would just end the show. Like, just runs up the GIF, uses his cloning shit, and just fucking infinite rider kick GIF. But obviously that won't happen because it's probably going to be very similar to Zio's the Grand Zio's pausing the Summoned Riders thing, and it's probably never going to be seen again. It's just here for the debut to look cool, and they'll never show up again. Anyway, so they fight, and it's a cool fight, and they finally take out the Hell Giftarian, I believe that's what he's called, with magnetic powers. It seems obvious there would be a magnet theme, considering, Icky's color is primarily a red color, and Vice's color is primarily a blue color, and it seems kind of obvious there might have been a magnet motif, but it's not, so obvious, like Magnet states. So it's kind of there, but also not there. But anyway, they use a magnetic power to finally beat the Hell Giftarian. And then Giff decides because Giff has kind of been watching this whole fight from his GIF hole in the sky, decides to fucking blast the fuck out of them, which pretty smart for the main villains to just say, "Oh, you got new power. Gotta deal with that real quick," and tries to fucking wipe them out. But Icky and Vice managed to use their power to basically hold off Giff's attack as a good sign that they might have the power to finally stop Giff and defeat him thanks to this new power. And that ends the episode. There's a little bit of follow-up with the family, which is kind of cute, where Genta reveals he's been acting more like his previous self, Junpei, this whole time. Since he got his memories back. So, as a bit more serious, but it's kind of cute because he apologizes to everyone for what happened and his kind of attempt at suicide. And then the mother goes, even if you got your memories back, you wouldn't be acting like this. And he goes, oh, you caught me. I was trying to act more like Junpei the whole time. And then it's like a cute family moment, and it's like, man, I miss this. I miss this from the early part of the season. Like, again, looking back, you kind of missed the sweet family moments that were in the early part of the season. Since the family's kind of been broken apart because of the plot. But, the family's slowly getting back together, and Ikki thinks about, now just have to get Daiji back from, going back to early season Daiji, but angrier. And that ends the episode for real this time. Ooh, boy, I have some thoughts. Okay, so this episode, technically speaking, has a lot going on. We have the Final Form debut, the stuff with Ikki and his dad, the stuff with George and his dad, the stuff with Daiji and Hiromu, and obviously Hiromu coming back. Now, obviously some things have to be dropped off because you only have about 24 minutes and so much plot to get through. So we have to focus on certain aspects and rush certain other aspects. Now, the only part of this episode I have any complaints about is Hiromu. It feels like for as big a moment as his return was at the end of last week's episode, in this week's episode he's not really that big a deal. I mean, it makes sense. Again, there's only so much to do in an episode, so you have to drop a little bit on the wayside, and unfortunately that was Hiromu. Despite how important he was at the beginning of the episode and his part with Daiji, it kind of falls off towards the middle part of the episode, and not even towards the middle part, like after the first part is over, he's just kind of out of the episode, which again is fair, all things considering. He might have a bigger role next week, considering the fact we might deal with the Daiji thing a bit more next week, or this upcoming week, but I don't know. Speaking of Daiji, he's another guy I want to complain about for a hot minute. So as I've been comparing Daiji ever since the end of the Dead Man storyline, Daiji has effectively become the Suzaku character. For those of you who don't know Code Geass, because that's a 10-year-old anime by this point, oh god, Code Geass is 10 years old. In Code Geass, Suzaku was a character who basically joined the enemy team for the sake of establishing peace. I won't get into the overall thing about Code Geass, but if you know Code Geass, you know what I'm referring to when I keep referring to Daiji as Suzaku, especially in this part of the season. Especially after we know that Phoenix is run by evil and the person who's directly working for GIF. Speaking of Akihisa, he desperately feels that we know what his whole shtick is. Basically, this episode reveals his whole shtick is he believes humanity is on the path of destruction, that humans have forsaken GIF's power, seeing him as a demon and devil, which begs questions as to what the hell GIF actually is, and basically sees humanity as ungrateful for GIF's power, and that they're going to lead the world to destruction, so might as well be led under GIF and, survive instead of wiping themselves out. It's a decent motivation. I think we've had villains like this before in Kamen Rider. Like, it's a very standard villain cliche. It was like, I believe in this higher power because humans suck. I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad motivation, but I just kind of wish Akihisa was like, either ham it harder or more of a presence. Because he's kind of, again, he has to share his presence as the villain with GIF. And again, this feels like this would work better if they were just the same character, but they're not. And again, it goes back to my theory that at some point, because Kamen Rider likes to have their final villain talk a bit during the final episode, instead of just being a straight-up monster villain. Like, I think the last time we had just a villain that's just a straight-up monster with no talking at all for the final fight might have just been Kuga. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah. Yeah. At some point in the series, I still think that GIF is going to merge with Akihisa, or Akihisa's going to take GIF's power, or maybe it'll be Vale, who takes all of GIF's power for himself in order to get it back into Igarashi's one last time, especially considering the family theme this season has. Because again, GIF at present has no personality at all, so we can't deliver the final villain speech for the second to last episode. Because again, he just he's just power. He has no speaking lines, no personality at this point. And I'm not complaining, as just the villain Gift works as a symbol, especially considering how damn strong he is. But again, he has no personality, so we don't know if Gift wants to control the Earth or not. It could be one of those things where there's a major misunderstanding at the last second. Again, this is what happens when you have a villain that doesn't talk. They just have to rely on what the mouthpiece says, and if the mouthpiece is less interesting, which, again, actually I want him to ham it more when he's going all, oh, Gift-sama. Like, I think Aguilera had the perfect amount of Gift-sama love in her, but Akihisa's more of a fervent follower, so I feel he should be a more fervent follower. Anyway, let's leave that aside. About Daiji. Again, he's gone back to how he was in the early seasons with his dislike of Ikki, or at least not believing in Ikki, as well as his overall aggression towards him. Like, again, I get it. I get what they're going for with Daiji, but it feels weird for him to still regress immediately back to this point after everything they've done so far. After everything else, he just regresses immediately back to, Ikki, what the fuck are you doing? It just doesn't, stop him or anything. And another thing I do have to point out, Helgiftarian was kind of a weak villain for the Final Form debut fight because he's only been around for a few episodes. I get it. We needed a Final Form fight, so Helgiftarian works for that, especially because we know he has the hyper regeneration that Gift has, so we can show off that yes, this form can deal with Gift's hyper regeneration, but he's not that memorable of a character. I bet that if you didn't look it up, you wouldn't know what his name was. If he was maybe a bit more of a presence in the previous few episodes, or did a bit more fighting on his own, then maybe, but so far he's just, nothing. Anyway, as for the likes, I really liked the father-son motif this episode had. Again, we had the father-son motif with Ikki and his dad, and then George and his dad. I like that this also resolved the George and his father situation. I like that we delved into George's feelings about his father for the past few episodes. Again, if your dad fakes his death for at least a decade, you're gonna end up with a lot of mixed feelings when a dude turns out to be alive, no matter what his reasoning is. And, George's father's reasoning is at least shown to be somewhat understandable. The dude wanted to protect his son. We don't know anything about George's mom, so we can assume she's dead or something happened to her. But, George's dad wanted to protect his son, so he did what he believed was right and sacrificed himself, or at least faked his death, to work in the shadows to at least somewhat protect his son. Again, letting your son work for Phoenix in the first place was probably the big mistake you made, buddy. But still, it didn't work out in the end. I do like the moment where, in the middle of the surgery, George comes to him and they work together. I'm not going to spoil the moment or explain exactly what happens, but it's kind of a touching moment to show just how much George's father does love his son and care for him in a bit of a subtle way, and how much George does actually love and respect his father, but is clearly working through the issues of, again, the man faking his death for over a decade. Now back to Ikki and his father. Again, I like the strong family bonds theme. I like the little moment where, Genta is making a video will to his family because he doesn't know if he's going to survive the operation. And then, Ikki just running up in the surgery room and going, nope! when he thinks his dad might die. And so he basically goes, look, if my family ain't together, the world ain't worth saving. It's kind of selfish as fuck. But at the same time, I get it. I mean, I'm obviously paraphrasing here. But yeah, it's just a cool moment. As soon as Ikki realizes Dad's in danger, he rushes to where the surgery is and just slaps the fuck out of the glass thing holding the Vice stamp. It's just kind of a cool moment that shows Ikki's main priorities have and always will be his family. Protecting the world, yeah, but I gotta protect the family before I can protect the world. So I like the ending where the family's going back to how they were in the early season with Genta basically apologizing for everything, and the whole video almost dying thing and all that stuff. And it's kind of sad because I think they should consider Busan part of the family, especially considering the fact he also held the secret about Genta for so long. And at this point, they might as well consider Vice a part of the family too. Like, you know, I need to watch the Veil special to figure out what exactly happened between at the time Junpei and Veil, but obviously Ikki and Vice aren't trying to repeat the cycle and are basically close as brothers, if not two souls in one body, in a way. I mean, that's kind of literally what they are. Anyway, next major compliment: the final form itself. Oh, Gifford Rex. So Gifford Rex, as a name, kind of like it. Obviously, it makes sense. This is a more powered up Rex form driven by GIF. It makes sense to have a T-Rex theme because then I think about the past 3 writers, like the Reiwa writers, the final forms are always, so far, because it might change, a more souped up version of the first form. And yeah, that makes sense. It does work. And finally, it makes sense and it goes on theme. Like, yeah, you can argue that every writer final form is a souped up version of the base form, but it really feels like that in Reiwa. Like, 02 is obviously a major upgrade to 01, and, I'm forgetting Saber's final form. Cross Saber is obviously, I mean, it's a Saber repaint, but still, never mind that controversy. I already talked enough about Cross Saber twice. So, let's just talk about Gifford Rex. I love the suits. I love how fucking colorful it is. I also love, like, I forgot what it was called, Go-Onger, because they have to put the helmets for the final form on over their base form helmets. So I kind of want someone to add in the Met on that they say in Go Ranger. I think that's what it's called. The Sentai season that would eventually become I've been blanking on names of Power Ranger seasons. The Sentai season that would eventually become Power Rangers RPM. Again, I think it's Go Ranger because I know the Go on Wings, but I feel Go Ranger is a way older Sentai. This is one of those Sentai things where the names are so similar to other seasons, like Kyryuger and Kyryuger. I don't even know if I said 2 different names there. I'm referring to different Sentai seasons, but their names are so similar, it fucks with my head. Okay, enough about the Japanese language fucking with me. Again, I love this final form. I like that the Vice stamp is 2 Vice stamps. I like the fact that Vice gets a Revice belt to do this. This is no final form. Like, it's funny, we've had final form gimmicks that involve belts this whole, like, on all of Reiwa. This is the final form that says, fuck it, buy 2 belts if you want to use this thing appropriately. Think about it. And 02's case, you had to buy a belt edition for the 02 to make it a 02 driver. Cross Saber, you had to buy a whole new sword for it, which, again, I felt they didn't live to the full potential of that gimmick. And finally, Revice went like, you have to buy 2 drivers to use this to full effect. Again, I find that funny that, like, we've had fucking with the drivers as a gimmick throughout all the Reiwa era so far, and this one just goes, no, you just need 2 drivers instead of just 1. No, 2 drivers. So it makes me wonder if the next season's gonna just have, you know what? You need 3 drivers to use this. It'll just be hilarious. But again, I do like the fact that the Gifford Rex Vice stamp is actually 2 Vice stamps and 1. I like Vice's Ultimate I guess the forms are called Ultimate Revi and Ultimate Vice. I like the Ultimate Vice has his tail. I like the fact that these things can still use the remix. Like, it's cool to see the remixes come back in a way, because we obviously haven't seen them a lot since the early seasons, the early part of the season. So it's good to see the remixes come back. And it's good that the remix also references Ikki's soccer stuff, because the remix that they use in the episode is Vice turns himself into a ball and Ikki gives him the flying kick. And it's really cool. Again, they've done like subtle references to Ikki being a soccer player, considering the fact he's more of a kick fighter. At least he uses kicks a lot in his fights, especially in a debut fight. But it's cool to see him, just be like, Vice turn to a ball, okay, and just kicks them at an enemy. Again, It's just really cool. Again, the magnet stuff. Did not expect the magnet. Kind of loved it, though. Oh, I actually had a lot to say about this episode, didn't I? So, yeah. Overall, great episode. Ultimate Revice. Great final form. The name, I'm kind of mixed on it. I kind of wish they might have just called it Gifford Revice or something. But the Ultimate Revice sounds too generic. Maybe they'll say that for the movie final form. Movie form or something. I don't know. But, with that, I'll see you all next week. And maybe we'll finally stop Daiji from going full Suzaku. Although I imagine he sells a lot further to fall. Because there's a theme here. This theme that they brought up in this episode that the fan base has been debating about. But I'm going to save that for next week's episode to see if they confirm or deny that theming. So, until next time, everybody.